A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Karl
We got it all
Rove.
covered.
Okay. We have with us the Consul General of Israel in the studio.
Hi, Karl. And Karl, I know you're on the way at the airport, actually leaving the DNC, about to fly out. So we're thrilled that you're joining us. Karl, your reaction first off to some of the protests that we have seen, these horrible anti-Israel, anti-American, anti-West protests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, first of all, I was surprised how small they were. You know, all of this talk about tens of thousands of protesters. And second of all, how, this is one of many things that they hate America for is its support of Israel. But I have to admit, I enjoyed watching it on television the other night because they had a group of about several dozen of these protesters who were trying to confront the police, and they insisted upon marching, and the police basically cordoned them off, would keep them safe from when they passed intersections. They kept sort of negotiating with them, and then when they got to a particular place, you could tell that the protesters wanted to get ugly, and they started pushing and shoving the police. And at that moment, up around the corner appear several hundred additional police, and with that, the Chicago police surgically go in and grab each of the leaders of the group whom they've been talking with and negotiating with and identified over the previous hour and a half, and grabbed each one of them and put them in the pokey, and off they went, and the rest of the crowd just sort of dissipated. It was a joy to see.
Yeah,
It's not Chicago 68, is it, Karl?
No, it is not, Ed. It is just I tip my hat to the Chicago Police Department. They trained for this, they prepared it, and they were really thoughtful about it and really smart. Particularly, you could just tell as they went through this crowd, you knew that they were going for each one of the people that they'd identified as a leader of the group. And when they grabbed each one of them, many of them, made a scene, and that was fine. They were very professional about pulling them out, but you could just see the life go out of this small group of several dozen protesters when they plucked out the 4 or 5 leaders of the group and took them to the paddy wagon.
Now, I understand that they did not allow the Israeli protesters, pro-Israel, they didn't give them a license to protest.
Well, I'm not certain they needed a license because they were standing on a synagogue property across the street from the route where the pro-Hamas demonstrators were going. And the police were well out. They had a big police presence there to protect the pro-Israel protesters. Do we have to call them protesters? Let's say the pro-Israel supporters.
Supporters, fine. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you could just tell, the police were prepared for that moment, and that's exactly why the Hamas group wanted to walk that way, was so that they could, hurl insults towards a synagogue. I mean, these people are sick. They one of the things that the local reporters were talking about in the Chicago news was how many of the protesters denied that there had been a massacre on October 7th. They denied that civilians had been killed, that women had been raped.
And Karl, I understand every night they've had at least one pro-Palestinian speaker.
My suspicion is that, you'd have to dig hard to get that. But yes, I would, there are people who clearly have been on that podium who I suspect in other circumstances have been saying things, anathema to the Israeli cause, but I didn't hear anything from the stages last night or the night before.
What did you make, Karl, of when President Biden on Monday night said, he brought it up on his own, hey, the protesters out there, they have a point. A lot of people thought, it seemed very inappropriate.
I thought so too. And then his comment, I think the irony is lost on President Biden. But after attacking President Trump for having made a comment about Charlottesville, in which there were good people on both sides, he then proceeded to say both sides have a point about the fight in Gaza. And I wrote my article today in the Wall Street Journal about it. I was thoroughly disappointed in President Biden's remarks. He could have gone out on a high note. It would have served his party well. More importantly, it would have served the country and him well. But instead of, saying I am grateful for the opportunity to have served my country, I've done my best, he said those things, But that was a brief moment in a long description of how he had been a great transformational president, and we all ought to be grateful for the things that he did, like giving us inflation and passing these laws that brought the big spending packages that brought it about. You know, it was just amazing to me how tone deaf he was. It was, as I put in my piece, he was not speaking to the audience. He wasn't even speaking to the country. What he was speaking to was future historians to try and convince them that they ought to put him near the top of their rankings of effective presidents.
Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
Consul General, you had a question for Karl Rove?
No, I just want to say that I heard your report, Karl, and I'm very worried that there are still, I don't know how many, but Americans that actually believe the lies of Hamas. And you described the pro-terrorist organization protesters. That's what they are, and not pro-Palestinians. Don't say anymore. I'm talking about in general, not about you, of us, of course. There are terror organization supporters who dare to deny the October 7 massacre. And I want all of us actually to stand for the truth. We are doing it. I want that most of the Americans will do it. Just, stand for Israel, but stand for yourselves.
Also, Mr. Consul General, one of the things that really sickened me was they went even further, because there were protesters on camera. You see them. Yeah. They were asked and said, what do you think of October 7th? And they said, what's the problem with October 7th? That is shocking.
I saw. That's unbelievable. I think that all the brave Americans, and you are brave people. I admire the United States. You must be proud of yourselves and not be, to reflect the weak in the presence of evil. And if you, and I'm afraid that if our communities around the states will reflect the actually weakness in the presence of evil, then it will be bad not only to the Jewish communities or to the state of Israel, to the United States of America.
Yeah, great thoughts.
You know what I've always said, Consul General? The free world is depending on the United States of America to keep the free world free.
There's a great expression that says all you need to have evil triumph is the absence of good to confront it.
Yeah, good men do nothing.
That's right. When good men do nothing, when they don't speak up. Listen, there are people today who deny the Holocaust with the slaughter of 6 million Jews.
Yeah, it's shocking.
They didn't happen.
Who is he, by the way? Who is he?
Oh, this is...
No, who is he who denied the Holocaust?
The Iranians.
No,
yes,
the
and others.
The Palestinians.
Of course, they
call themselves neighbors. I'm always say that actually he's the leader of the PLO organization. He called himself the PA chair, Abu Mazen. He never condemned the October 7 massacre. Never condemned the October 7 massacre.
Which raises
so many questions.
If you want to argue for a two-state solution, who are you going to have as a negotiating partner in good faith?
Absolutely.
Who are they going to put in to run Gaza after?
Absolutely. By the way, Karl, before we let you go, Karl, I know you're at the airport. Real quick, your overall thoughts of what you think we're going to hear tonight from Kamala Harris, who's going to be speaking tonight, of course, and accepting the nomination for president on the Democratic side.
I think it's going to be light on policy, which is not necessarily a bad thing for her, because we don't know much about her. And the people who are tuning in tonight who don't know much about her are going to want to hear her life story, her values, her views, what shaped her life, what she thinks is important. Plenty of time for her to talk about policy later. But tonight, if she's smart, she'll put the focus on here's who I am as a person and how you can relate to me, and here's what I care about, and I hope you care about those same sorts of things. So we'll see. She can read off of teleprompter. Let's this is not going to be the ultimate test. She can read off a teleprompter and deliver a speech. It's when she gets into the debate and when she gets into free-flowing conversations with, and interviews with journalists that we're going to get a real test of who she is.
And Judge Weinberg.
Karl, I want to ask you this. Chuck Schumer's gone out there now, and he's talking about eliminating the filibuster. Can you explain to our listeners why that's such a dangerous phenomenon?
Historically, the Senate has required 60 votes to take up a measure. What this would mean is that they could get their entire agenda with 50 members of the Senate and a vice president who agrees that, we ought to admit the District of Columbia as a state. Yeah, we should have the federal government take over running local elections and abolish voter ID. Yes, we should pass a Medicare for all bill and kill private health insurance. All of these things that the liberals and the progressives and the left wing talk about, they could get it with 50 votes in the Senate and a vice president of their party sitting in the chair.
So they can totally remake the United States of America by a simple majority and a tiebreaker with the vice president.
That's correct. Revise the Supreme Court, add additional seats, do all the things that they've been talking about doing on the left for years. And they could bludgeon their way through to it with 50 members of the Senate.
And Carl, that's why we have to hold a majority in the House of Representatives.
That's right, and that requires New York victories.
You bet.
Take the Senate and keep the House.
All right, Carl, thank you so much. I know you got a flight. We're so glad you're with us, Carl. Thank you so much. Safe travels, my friend. Thank you very much.